Radha Madhava. So, would you like to repeat, Ritu Mataji, when I sing?
Yeah, sure. Why not, Mataji? You want me to sing? Yes.
Yes.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunj Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunj Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girvaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girvaradhari Jaya Yashodanandan Brajjana Ranjan Yashodanandan Brajjana Ranjan Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunj Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunj Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are doing chapter 5 today, starting from text 23 until the end of the chapter, text 29. So what I would like to do is read the verse and translation, and then we'll go through each verse, what Prabhupada has described in the purport. So if anyone would like to volunteer to read, they can raise their hands. I'll start with the first one. If anybody wants, then they can do. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and do. Shaknoti haiva yasodum praksharira vimokshanad kama krododbhavam vegam sayukta sasukhi naraha. Before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well situated and is happy in this world. Okay, Ritu Mataji can read the 24th verse, Sanskrit and translation.
Sure. Yonatah sukho nataramasthant jyotireva yaha sa yogi brahma nivaranam brahma bhuto dhigachati. Translation: one whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoice within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Let's see if anyone raised their hands. Okay. See any hands? So I'll read it. Labhante brahma nirvanam rishayakshina kalmashaha chinnadvaidaya tatmanaha sarvabhuta hite rataha. Those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, whose minds are engaged within, who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and who are free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme. Mataji, yeah, you can read.
कामक्रोधविमुक्तानां यतीनां यतचेतसामभितो ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं वर्तते विदितात्मनां. Those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured of liberation in the Supreme in the very near future.
Thank you. 27 and 28. Sparshan kritva bahirbahyam chakshuschaivantare bhruvo pranapanau samau kritva nasabhyantara charinau yatendriyamano buddhir munir moksha parayanaha vigatecha bhaya krodho yasada mukta eva saha. Shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the two eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breaths within the nostrils, and thus controlling the mind, senses, and intelligence, the transcendentalist aiming at liberation becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated. The last one, anyone would like to read?
I can read.
Yes, Mataji.
Okay.
Radhe Govind Mataji, I think you wanted to read. Please go ahead.
Okay, Mataji. Bhoktaram tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam gyatva mam shantim ricchati. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Thank you. Umagnanatimmirandasya gnananjanashalakaya chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are covering 7 verses today, starting verse 23. We'll go over each verse and see what Srila Prabhupada is giving us in each verse. So the first verse, in verse 23, in the translation, the main thing that is being discussed is one has to learn to tolerate the urges of material senses, and also one has to learn to control desire and anger. Then he'll be happy in this world. To be happy in this world, we have to learn these things, to tolerate, how to control the forces of Vacho Vegam, Manasakroda Vegam, Jihva Vegam, Udaropasta Vegam. We are reading Nectar of Instruction now here also. So in that it is mentioned, the very first verse talks about how we have to control our urge to speak, and the force of anger, the forces of mind, the forces of stomach, the forces of genitals, the forces of the tongue. When we can control these, then we can be called a Goswami. One who can control these urges, 6 urges, he is called a Goswami. And only if one becomes a Goswami, they can be happy. Any thoughts why one cannot be happy without controlling senses? There are so many rich people in this world, right? They have everything they need. Don't you think they are happy? Why should we control to be happy? Why can't we just enjoy? Yes, Mataji, Radhe Govinda Mataji.
Krishna Mataji, because if we don't satisfy the Lord of senses, Lord Rishikesh, then without satisfying Krishna, we won't be happy.
And Prema Priya Padma Mataji.
Mataji, because we get more greedy
Yeah,
and
we get
keep
more
wanting
greedy.
to have more.
Yes, yes. That's the answer. How much ever you give to the senses, we still would need more. It's like if there is a burning fire, if we put gasoline in it, it will burn more. So the fire asks for fuel. But if you give fuel, it won't stop burning. It'll burn more. It'll burn more. The only way to stop the fire is by not giving what it wants. Similarly, the senses that we have, they ask for more and more and more as we give. They ask for, something impossible. So ultimately, they'll be dissatisfied. By giving them what they want, we won't get satisfied. So the only way we can get satisfied is by learning to control them. So right now, the education, the whole world, the society teaches the kids that you have to do what you want to do. You have to give your senses whatever they want. That's how you can be happy. That is happiness. Happiness means giving senses what they want. But this is totally opposite. This is not what the outside world says. So how can we convince the kids that actually you have to control the senses? Any thoughts?
By doing some kirtan, I think japa is the only way we can control our senses.
Yes, yes. Yeah, by giving the senses a higher taste, then they can be controlled easily. If we don't give them the higher taste, just simply, pushing them down doesn't work for too long. Only when we give higher taste, then they don't go for lower taste. Like, we all, when we are kids, we have like little things that we can become happy with. If we buy a new toy, we can be happy. And then when we grow up, we do bigger things. We accomplish so many things by nice houses, cars, and different things. And we seek happiness in such things. And when we grew up, the same toy that gave us happiness when we were kid, it doesn't matter so much anymore. So similarly, if we experience higher taste in Krishna consciousness, then the lower taste of becoming happy with the senses momentarily, the sense gratification is also very temporary. It's never permanent. It just, gives happiness for just a few moments, a few months or a few years, but then it will disappear. So this momentary, temporary happiness, we don't have any taste for it. Once we experience taste in Krishna consciousness, like Mataji was saying, in Sankirtan, in chanting, we do experience some satisfaction, some bliss in the heart. And when we experience that, we don't want to go back to the little toy experience of sense gratification. And also, Krishna tells that we have to check the force of desire and anger. So generally, we can observe when we chant our rounds, what is the mind thinking about? Mostly when we have some things to accomplish, some, desires, mind is making plans about how we can accomplish, thinking about, how it would be so nice to get what we want. And also, if we are really upset about something, we keep thinking about that. How can this person do this to me? How did this happen? Why did it fail? All these thoughts will come. So these are the biggest distractions that we have for the mind. So we need to learn to check the force of desire and anger to be happy. If we want to be happy, we need to tolerate the urges of the senses. We need to control the forces of desire and anger. That's what Krishna is telling in verse 23. In verse 24, he's saying that one whose happiness is within, who's active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. So it's not the external circumstances that make us happy. It's a very big shift in thinking. A person who is fixed in Krishna consciousness, whose consciousness is transcendental, he can be happy from within. Happiness is within ourselves, within our connection with Krishna. It's not coming from outside. It doesn't depend on what kind of house we have, what kind of car we have, what kind of possessions we have. It doesn't depend on what kind of accomplishments, fame, glory we have. Doesn't depend on how others are treating us. Happiness doesn't depend on any external circumstance. Happiness comes from within. That the real happiness comes from within. Only because of our illusion, we think that all these outside things can either make us happy or sad. When we come out of that illusion, when we are situated perfectly in transcendental consciousness, the happiness is coming from within. That person, although for the outside world, he may look like he is not doing much. A devotee in the outside world, sometimes a full-time devotee may not even work outside. But he is active. His happiness is there. His aim is there. His aim is to go inward, to purify himself, to connect himself with Krishna. And that's how he will be liberated from all these outside things. So unless one can do this, they cannot, retire from all these external engagements. Unless one can experience the internal happiness, they cannot restrain from outside stuff. Person wants to enjoy. Nature of the spirit soul is to be happy. Unless you find happiness within, happiness with connection with Krishna, to find happiness outside will not stop. So they both are mutually exclusive. If you are still finding happiness outside, that means you don't have happiness inside. If you have happiness inside, then you won't find happiness outside. That is liberation. Liberation means we are not looking for happiness outside. And then text 25. Those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, whose minds are engaged within, who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and who are free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme. So, in the purport, Prabhupada mentions one very important thing. So if a person is fully Krishna conscious, you will see him engaged in the welfare of all living entities. He's not just concerned about himself. He's concerned about other living entities. It's part of Krishna consciousness to be concerned about other living entities. If someone is very selfish, that itself shows that they're not fully Krishna conscious. The actual knowledge is we know Krishna is the source of everything. We know that everybody in this material world are suffering because they forgot Krishna. They forgot Krishna as the supreme enjoyer. So when we are perfectly fixed in this consciousness, if we don't get material enjoyment, we won't think bad about it. We'll just know that Krishna is the enjoyer. I'm not the enjoyer. So if you know that you are not the enjoyer, then you won't expect enjoyment to come from this material world. So obviously you won't be disturbed if you don't get it. If you're not expecting something, if it doesn't come, there is no disappointment. But if you're expecting something and it doesn't come, then there is disappointment, right? When we expect something and it doesn't happen, then there is disappointment. But if you're expecting that I am not the enjoyer, Krishna is the enjoyer, and if something doesn't happen according to our desires, then we don't feel bad. Actually, at that point of time, the desires are the same as Krishna's desires. The desire is that Krishna should enjoy. Krishna is the proprietor. Krishna is the friend of everybody. So when we know that, then we also want everyone to be connected to Krishna, because that's the way they can be happy. If we want to see everyone happy, if we want to see anyone happy, then the best way is to connect them to Krishna. It's like one time the body parts, they went on strike. They think they're working very hard and stomach is the one enjoying. So they think it's really unfair. Stomach really doesn't do anything. The body parts are doing everything, and then they work hard to bring the food, and the enjoyer is the stomach. So they stop feeding the stomach. And 1 day, 2 days, and 3 days, the whole body becomes weak. So then they realize that it's for our benefit that we are feeding the stomach. The stomach is maintaining us. Same thing, if a person is disconnected with Krishna, they suffer. They suffer a lot in the material world. So if we really like somebody, if we really are wishing well for somebody, we want them to be connected to Krishna. That is the first class welfare work, Prabhupada says. Because we know Krishna is the supreme, and we know that one can become free from all sins by connecting themselves to Krishna. The misery is because of the results of sinful activities. And you have to help a person to get out of those sinful habits and all the past sinful reactions. Only then a person can be free from misery. Externally, we may do so many things. We may give food, we may give clothes, we may give so many things externally. But if it is their karma to suffer, then they have to suffer. The only way to get rid of karma is to surrender to Krishna, to understand that He is the Lord of this universe, to understand that He is the best friend of everybody. When we encourage somebody in that manner, then we can help them immensely. That is the best help one can do. Physical welfare, we may do so much, but that implicates us in karma, and it doesn't really solve the problem of the other person. Because if he has to suffer a certain amount of misery, he has to suffer. And the only best thing one can do is to get out of this material world. Then they don't have to even suffer the basic problems like birth, death, old age, and disease, and no other problems. Once you go back to the spiritual world, it's all happiness forever. And verse 26 says, he reiterates again, Krishna tells again that those who are free from anger and material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, constantly endeavoring for perfection, they are assured of liberation. So in the purport, Prabhupada says, he gives a very nice verse from Bhagavatam. Yat pada pankaja palasha vilasa bhaktya Karmashayam gratitamudgrathyanti santaha tadvanna riktamatayo yatayo piruddha shroto ganastamaranam bhajavasudevam. Just try to worship in devotional service Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even great sages are not able to control the forces of the senses as effectively as those who are engaged in transcendental bliss by serving the lotus feet of the Lord, uprooting the deep grown desire for fruitive activities. So these desires are not just on the surface, they're very, very deep. If you see these big trees, Texas has a lot of big trees. Their roots are very deep. You cannot just pull them out. It needs great endeavor to pull them out. And only a person who's engaged in devotional service, he can control the senses easily. Even great sages, it's very difficult for them. Like Sage Vishwamitra, he was doing meditation for so many thousands of years, but then when Menaka came, he could not control his senses. Whereas Haridas Thakur, although he's born in Muslim family, he wasn't engaged in devotional service to Krishna from the beginning of his life, but later on he took it up and he could resist so many temptations that are put in front of him. So a person who's engaged in devotional service, you can see the whole world outside. Nobody can follow four regulative principles. Only devotees can follow it. Why? Because they're engaged in the service of Krishna. It's not easy for the rest of the world to follow. But for a devotee, it's easy. They can follow. They don't separately endeavor too hard to follow the four regulative principles. Naturally, they can follow because of their absorption in devotional service, because of their engagement in serving the lotus feet of the Lord. It's easy for them. So if someone wants to control senses, which is the means for becoming happy, then they have to engage in devotional service. That is the only means to do it easily. And when we engage in his service, Krishna maintains us. Just like, fish brings up its children just by looking at them. And tortoise brings up its offspring simply by meditation. So tortoise lays the eggs on the ground, and then while it's in the water, it meditates on the eggs. So this is the way Krishna also sustains us by looking at us, by thinking of us. And we can also go back to Krishna by thinking of him. We don't need any scientific or physical mechanism to go out of the material world and go to the spiritual world. Just by thinking of Krishna, we can attain him at the end of life. It's an easy process. It's not like it doesn't require any money. Nobody is disqualified from this process. Anybody can follow and get the result, same result. There is no bar to follow this procedure. And then the next verse talks about the different steps in the process in Ashtanga Yoga. The 6th chapter is Dhyana Yoga. It talks in detail about how to sit, how to breathe, and all those things. So this is like a little introduction before we end this chapter. And then in the 6th chapter, he elaborates more. So in this, Krishna tells how one should keep the eyes focused in between the two eyebrows, and then how they have to control the breath and control the mind and senses. So all these things are explained. And Prabhupada in the purport, he explains all the 8 different steps in Ashtanga Yoga: Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. So he tells that Pratyahara means like withdrawing the senses from other objects. So that is like the 4th step in Ashtanga Yoga process. It's the same as what we follow in Krishna consciousness. Like we don't engage in many things that other people engage in, like going out and eating and watching movies and all those things we don't do. That is pratyahara. We can withdraw the senses. So that ability we have without following any asana. We just chant 16 rounds, that is, and follow the regulative principles. Those are the yama and niyama. And then we don't do pranayama or asana, but we can get to pratyahara. And the later steps will also happen if we constantly chant and practice without fail every day. If we do, then we get to this dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Those stages will come. So any kind of yoga that we have, karma yoga or dhyana yoga or jnana yoga, without bhakti, they will not culminate in perfection. They do not give the result they are supposed to give. Without bhakti, just everything remains material. To reach these higher stages, dhyana and samadhi, is not possible without bhakti, even for a yogi. They have to meditate on the super soul within. And because of that meditation, they can move further in the steps. And Krishna consciousness obviously is easier than all these yoga processes. They require us to go to the forest where nobody can disturb us. And we have to stay there for many years. And in other yogas, people used to meditate for thousands of years. That's how they used to realize. But for a Krishna conscious person, it seems like we are just living like a normal life, not really withdrawing ourselves from the current society, but at the same time, we can accomplish all these different results one can accomplish by doing the Ashtanga Yoga. It is a better way than Ashtanga Yoga. And finally, the last verse, a very important verse, says, Bhoktaram yagna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram sifridam sarva bhutanam jnatma mam shantim richate. So one has to know these three things to attain peace. This is the peace formula. The first thing is Krishna is the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities. The second thing is he is the Lord of all planets and demigods. And third thing is he is the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. The first one. So there are so many sacrifices that happen in the world. So many yajnas, so many different rituals, and even in our daily life, we do so much sacrifice. But the actual beneficiary of any sacrifice should be Krishna. Any sacrifice that we do, we should do it for Krishna. Sometimes we do all these sacrifices for senses. I know some mothers who fast on a certain day for kids and their well-being or their accomplishments, material accomplishments. Some people fast on some days for wealth. So this is not proper understanding. This is not peace formula. It doesn't generate peace. The peace formula is you do whatever austerities or sacrifices you do for Krishna. So when we actually do that, the satisfaction is not dependent on the result. The satisfaction is in the process when we do all these things for Krishna. Even our duties we can do for Krishna. And then we don't have to think about the results so much. Then we can be peaceful. That's one formula. It's not complete though. We have to understand the other two parts of it also. And Krishna is the proprietor of everything. So sometimes being the proprietor or wanting to be the proprietor causes a lot of disturbance in the mind. We want something, we want to own this, but we can't. And then we work very hard to own things. And then because of that, we have so much misery. Then we feel attached and there is dissatisfaction if we become separated from what we get, and there is also dissatisfaction if we don't get what we want. So all these things can be avoided by knowing that Krishna is the owner of everything. He is the Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Everything belongs to him. So we don't need to mark our boundaries. We don't need to just accumulate like crazy. Everything belongs to Krishna. And if Krishna wants to give us, he will give us. We don't need to over endeavor for anything. We don't, even if Krishna gives us, we don't need to feel entitlement towards it. We just have to know that everything belongs to Krishna. That removes a lot of stress from the mind. And the third one is Krishna is the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. Sometimes we get very disturbed for the things that happen in this world. We may also get disturbed if some of our dear ones don't have good health or they are experiencing difficulties. We may get disturbed. But understanding that Krishna is their well-wisher more than we are will put us at ease. We think we know. We think this situation is not good for them. Why is it happening? But when we know that Krishna is the real well-wisher, then we don't need to feel so bad about it. We don't need to feel like we need to correct it. So when we realize all these three things, then there is nothing else that would disturb us. Then we can be peaceful forever. So this is the way one can accomplish peace. There are so many different kinds of endeavor in the material world for bringing peace in the society. But when one can learn this philosophy and implement it in their life, that's when peace comes. Peace doesn't come by any external endeavors. Peace comes by internal advancement. So I'll stop here. I'll open up for comments and questions.
Hare Krishna Mataji, very, very knowledgeable, and I just learned so much about how to deal with issues and your anger. Everything is connected to Krishna, and if we think that everything what we do, reaction, action is Krishna, it's for Krishna, I think by default we will try to change ourselves. Our attitude toward others, even for ourselves, will change, because then we will feel happiness within ourselves. So that's what it says. You says happiness is within you. Aim to rejoice. And also a person who is into Krishna consciousness, happiness will automatically come. You don't have to ask for that happiness. It will come to you by default. Also, one must learn to tolerate the material urges, desires. That's the whole one thing which is described as unhappiness. You are calling or inviting unsatisfaction in your life when you are asking for urges and desires. But if you think those urges can be given to Krishna, you will feel happy, because nothing belongs to you. Everything is Krishna. So such a beautiful, I wrote down a few of the important the notes. I took the notes. It's so beautiful. I'm going to read it again and maybe listen to your voice again. But at this moment, I will request maybe Leela Das Prabhuji, if he wants to say something. Then as you can say.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Very nice presentation, Mataji. Very nice explanation of all the verses that you have given with real examples, practical examples that we face in our life.
Yeah.
So we are very happy that you have come to Parsadi Foundation to give us your association, Vani Association, to our listeners. Thank you so much for that. And then Mataji, you can take any questions if any listeners, any devotee have any questions, please. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. If anyone wants to ask a question, please raise your hand and I will unmute you. Amit Prabhuji, you can unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Danvat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Guru and Gauranga. Mataji, I have a quick question. Means I have a couple of questions, but first one is that when we are talking about peace in the last verse, right? So we say that peace is internally and something like that. So I want to understand what exactly peace means here from a spiritual and Krishna consciousness perspective.
Peace means you can focus on Krishna without getting distracted in Krishna consciousness. And for a materialist, it may be that he's not feeling pulled in different directions. He can sit down and be calm and not be disturbed by various things.
Okay, but Mataji, generally it happens like when we do chanting also for few minutes, we are able to concentrate, and then mind get distracted here and
Exactly.
there. Like you can say that the thoughts are coming from here and there. I will do that. I past, present, future, all the things coming at that time only.
Yes.
So how
Yes.
do we means? I understand that we listen all the lectures and everybody is saying that we have to control our mind, we have to pull back the mind and everything, but it means practically speaking when we are doing that stuff while chanting, even it is not possible to like go and get the mind again and all that stuff. So how we can means at least not get rid, but at least how we can improve that aspect or that perspective.
Okay. So, what the mind does when we are chanting is a reflection of what we have done the day before.
Okay.
How our day is. What are we filling the whole day with? That is what we think the next
Okay.
day also. And the cycle continues. So, we need to watch what kind of engagement is good for me. Of course, we all have to work for sustenance. But even while working, like if Arjuna could think of Krishna while fighting the battle, we can all think of Krishna in whatever job that we are doing. So we need to, we need to think about different ways on how we can be Krishna conscious all day long. And then when we do that, the result will show up in the next day chanting.
Okay.
Then we
So
can focus more on chanting.
So Mataji, generally means I'm not taking like generally we devotees do chanting in the morning, very first thing in the morning. So at that time we were in the very fresh mood. We doesn't have anything bad in my mind at that time generally. So how we can correlate with the theory you just told. So how we can correlate the theory
Even
with
in
this
the
thing?
morning, like the mind is accustomed to think about what it usually thinks about.
Mm-hmm.
If all day long we are not thinking about Krishna and then just trying to chant in the morning, then it will be difficult, even in the morning. It's not like just because we get up in the morning, 100% focus will not automatically happen. So it will only happen if we mold our life in such a way that we are thinking of Krishna most of the time in different ways. Maybe we are engaged in different services. We have to plan for a festival, or we have to, cook for Krishna or dress him, and then, or we have to teach something to somebody. There are different ways of occupying. If we can train the mind in that way, then it will become easy to focus.
Okay, Mataji. Thank you, Mataji. So, Mataji, I have one more question. Can I ask?
Yes.
Mataji, in I think second or third verse, you were talking about we have everything in ourselves, like happiness, sorrow, distress, everything in ourselves, right? But generally means it is not specific to devotee or non-devotee. But generally, when we we humans try to find out the happiness at least outside, not inside. I know devotees like you or like senior devotees, and those are very much Krishna consciousness. They are able to control the mind. But like us, we were very like new or beginners or laymen. We generally mean we always think, yeah, we will do this for Krishna. We are doing for this Krishna. But eventually, what we are doing, we are trying to find the happiness outside of our or basically in the material world. Like for example, if somebody doesn't have a house or new car or something like that, we think, oh, we will get it, get the new one, although we have someone, right? So we are always thinking about always finding the happiness outside, in the outside material world. So
Mhm.
how we can how we can not do that or limit to do that?
Yeah. So you have to watch what is your tendency. Like you said, house. If somebody wants a big house, then they can help to build a big temple. When
Okay.
we engage our propensities in Krishna's service, we have to find a similar thing which we can do for Krishna. Here we want the house for ourselves, but we are engaging that propensity of acquiring a big property for Krishna. Then our desire to have it for ourselves will not be there, will be completely satisfied. So you think about what you want to do for yourself and try to do that for Krishna and see what happens after that. So it's a gradual process. So we have to take it as it comes and then try to, like, everybody needs some guide to guide them to do all these things in their personal life, however it applies to their situation. So you need help. Everybody needs help. So you approach senior devotees. They may help you on how you can curb this tendency, which will pull more into material illusion, but how you can come out of it and at the same time feel satisfied. It's not like you just shut yourself off and feel miserable later.
Correct.
Be doing that, but you should find means to be happy by doing that for Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you very much for clarification of both the answers. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Nice questions. Thank you.
Yeah, very knowledgeable. Mataji, I also have one question about anger, anger management. How to control anger, and especially with the kids around you, you get so exhausted. I think I asked this question with before also, because I try my best not to get mad. I try to see Krishna in them, but at the end of the day, when you're really exhausted, you just can't resist that, and you feel so sad, you feel bad, regret about that. But I'm practicing. But how to control? If you can give me some tips.
Yeah, it's difficult. In Kali Yuga, we don't have the proper setup for raising the kids. In olden days, there used to be so many adults in the family, right? They just go from one adult to the other and they have their own relationship with each of them. But we made it like in such a way that it's only the parents all the time now handling the kids. It's definitely a bad bargain. This Kali Yuga is a bad bargain. But we make the best use out of it as much as we can. So you try to give them some engagement. If they're not engaged, then they're going to bother you. So even until you sleep, you have a schedule and then let them follow that schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're tired, keep these activities like, which don't involve your help so much. You put those activities at the time when you are tired. Then they'll be by themselves.
Right.
Do it by themselves. It needs training. Raising a kid is like a big austerity.
Even during in the evening when I do my puja or some little bit sankirtan with my kids that I have started since they have summer vacation going on, so I involve them for sankirtan for 15 minutes. I have seen my son is always everywhere. He's like not into it. He will do sankirtan, but then he will jumping around, then moving around, and then I try not to get mad, but sometimes I get mad. Like, you need to focus here when you're watching TV, you're focusing. So now you are here, in the temple, you need to focus. So I don't know.
Give him make him do arati or give him kartal or something.
Yeah, I do that. I do that. Yes, I do that. But he'll do it for some time and then he'll run away. So, but maybe it's just the beginning. Maybe if you
Yes,
keep
yes, it
inviting
needs
him, then he'll
training.
get used to it. That's what I'm thinking. That he might get used to it. But
Yeah, it needs a lot of patience. Why don't you do it in the morning? Then you'll have more patience.
my morning is done by the time they get up. So my get up early morning. So and then
Okay.
I work. So I work. So my office starts. So I just
Okay.
try to get over with it in the morning. So
Yeah, whatever works. They'll learn it slowly. It needs a lot of patience with kids.
a lot of patience. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Seems like nobody has any further questions. So, Mataji, with your permission, if you say, then we can just close it.
Sure. Yeah.
Vanchakalpatarubhaksha वैष्णव नमः अनंतकोटि वैष्णवन की जय श्री श्री भगवान बिहारी भगवान की जय श्री आई गौर की जय प्रभुपाद की जय हरे कृष्णा
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Harilila Prabhu, for giving me this opportunity. Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्णा